Ever felt that initial spark to learn Spanish? That exciting moment of,
Yeah.
sí, voy a aprender español,
Oh, yeah, definitely.
only to be slightly tripped up by the alphabet and those numbers that roll off the tongue so differently.
Happens all the time. You're definitely not alone there.
Well, that's exactly what we're tackling in this deep dive.
That's right. We're zeroing in on the Spanish alphabet and numbers, the absolute bedrock for anyone starting their Spanish journey.
Mm-hmm.
Think of this as your accelerated path, sort of, to getting comfortable with those fundamental pieces of the language puzzle.
And we've got a really thorough guide as our foundation, actually. It walks us through everything from letter names to counting way past 1 billion.
Yeah, it's pretty comprehensive.
Plus, it's packed with expert advice designed to make this knowledge, really stick.
Exactly.
Our mission today, simple but crucial, to arm you with a strong, practical grasp of the Spanish alphabet and number systems.
So you can handle those essentials confidently.
Right. Okay, let's unpack this, beginning with the Spanish alphabet.
All right. So the Spanish alphabet, well, it uses the same familiar Latin script as English.
Which is a real plus, right?
Absolutely, a huge advantage for us. However, it includes one distinctive addition, the letter ni.
Ah, they need.
So in total, there are 27 letters you'll need to become familiar with. They are A, B, C, D, E, F, G, H, I, J, K, L, M, N, N, O, P, Q, R, S, T, U, V, W, X, Y, Z.
Okay. Now, while many of those look like old friends, the pronunciation can feel quite different. Take A, for instance. It's not that softer A sound we often use. It's much more open, almost like saying ah.
Yeah, a nice open ah. Good way to put it.
Then you've got B, or B, which is pronounced pretty much as you'd say bay.
Pretty straightforward, that one.
And C, C, C. Uh-oh. That one definitely keeps learners on their toes, doesn't it?
It does indeed. The pronunciation of C, well, it hinges on the vowel that comes right after it.
Okay.
So before A, O, or U, it makes a hard K sound, just like the English cat, casa, como, cubo.
Right.
But when it's followed by E or I, well, the pronunciation shifts. It's an S sound in most of Latin America. Sina, sina.
They guess. Okay.
But in Spain, it's typically pronounced as es, the sound you find in thin, sena, sina.
Right. The lisp sound, as some call it.
Exactly. Though it's not really a lisp, it's just how the sound works there.
And then we have the star of the Spanish alphabet, ni, or
Enya.
enya.
Yeah.
That's the letter that instantly says Hola España to me.
Huh. Yeah, it's very iconic.
For English speakers, the closest sound is that N in words like canyon or, as our guide aptly points out, piñata.
Yep. Piñata is a perfect example. It's a distinct sound. Think of it as a smooth single sound, not just an N followed by a Y.
Gotcha. One sound.
Exactly. And it's so important to remember that ni isn't just a decorative N. It's a completely separate letter.
Right. Its own spot in the alphabet.
Yeah, with its own place coming right after N. So in dictionaries, you'll find uña, fingernail, after una E.
Oh.
And it pops up in so many everyday Spanish words, año, español, Spanish, niño, child. So getting to grips with niño early on is like a real win.
Definitely. Now, what about K and W? They're in the official lineup, but our guide highlights that they really only appear in words borrowed from other languages.
That's correct, yeah. Words like kilometro or whiskey.
So, not native Spanish words.
No, they haven't historically been part of the core Spanish vocabulary, but have been adopted, due to the influx of international terms.
Okay. Then we encounter the somewhat confusing case of B, B, and V.
Ah, yes, B and V.
For many beginners, it's surprising that these two letters sound practically identical in most Spanish.
It really is. You hear vaca, cow, and burro, donkey, and the V and B sounds are almost indistinguishable for most speakers.
So if they sound the same, how do native speakers keep them straight when, say, spelling a word out loud?
Good question. They often clarify by saying B grande, literally big B, or V chica, small v.
B grande and V chica. Okay, that makes sense.
It's a simple but, effective way to avoid confusion when spelling something out.
And speaking of spelling, let's talk about CH, chi, and LL. L. I remember when I first started learning, these were always listed as separate letters.
Ah, you remember that, yeah.
What's the current status on those?
That's a great observation. Historically, both CH and LL were indeed considered distinct letters within the Spanish alphabet. for a long time.
Right.
However, since 2010, the Royal Spanish Academy, the RAE, updated its official stance. They no longer recognize them as standalone letters.
Oh, okay. So they're not letters anymore.
Well, they still represent unique sounds. CH is T's as in Chico, boy.
Like she and church.
Exactly. And LL, well, that sound varies a bit often, or Y, like in llama.
Right.
But when you're looking them up in a dictionary now, words starting with A will be found under C and those with L under L.
Ah, so it's about alphabetization.
Exactly. It's more about alphabetization than a change in how they sound. It's interesting, before 1994, the rules were even different. G's used to come after C. Very confusing back then.
Wow, yeah, that does sound confusing. So officially, they're digraphs now. 2 letters, 1 sound.
Pretty much, yeah. Digraphs that are alphabetized under their first letter. You might still hear older speakers list them separately, but the official standard has changed.
Okay. Now, if you need to ask someone how to spell a word in Spanish, what's the go-to phrase?
You'd ask, ¿Cómo se deletrea?
¿Cómo se deletrea? Got it.
That's the key question, meaning how is it spelled? And when you're spelling something out yourself, you simply say the name of each letter.
So for M-A-R-A-A.
It becomes Amare. Linking those letter names is super practical for names, addresses, clarifying anything, really.
Absolutely essential skill. And our guide also dives into Spanish acronyms and abbreviations. Looks like they have their own set of rules, too.
They do, yeah. Quite interesting. If an acronym is pronounceable, like ONU for Organización de las Naciones Unidas.
The UN.
Right. It's often read just like a word ONU.
Okay.
But if it's not easily pronounceable, like ONG for Organization No Governmental and NGO.
Right, ONG.
You pronounce each letter individually. ONEG. Sometimes you might even see it written as onege to reflect that spoken form.
Huh. One. Interesting. What about capitalization rules for acronyms?
Generally, for longer acronyms, usually more than 4 letters, only the first letter is capitalized. Think UNESCO, UNICEF.
Okay. And plurals. How do you make acronyms plural?
That's different from English. In writing, you usually don't add an S to the acronym itself. You'd write las ONG for the NGOs.
So no S in writing.
Correct. However, when speaking, it's common to add that S sound at the end. Las ONGs.
Got it. Written singular, spoken plural. What about abbreviations then, like for United States?
Right. For one-letter abbreviations, the plural is often formed by doubling the letter. The classic example is EEUU for Estados Unidos.
Ah, EEU, seen that.
The doubled E signifies the plural estados. For abbreviations that are 2 letters or longer, you typically just add an S in writing, like vols, for voluminese, volumes.
Okay.
You also see superscript for ordinal numbers 1.2 for primero first. We'll get more into those later.
Right, ordinals.
And a really important point, Spanish generally doesn't use a period in common unit symbols or scientific abbreviations. So just kilometers for kilometer or H for hydrogen, no dot.
Good to know. No periods there.
Yeah.
Okay, that gives us a really solid foundation with the alphabet. Feels like we've covered the key points.
Yeah, I think that hits the main things for the letters.
All right, let's move on to something equally crucial. Cardinal numbers, counting with confidence.
Okay, numbers. Spanish cardinal numbers follow a logical system, mostly. But there are definitely some unique forms you'll need to learn right at the beginning.
The first batch, right?
Exactly. Numbers 0 to 15 each have their own distinct name. 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 1, 2, 3, 14, 15.
0 through 15. Need to memorize those cold.
Pretty much. Pay a bit of attention to the pronunciation of cero. It can be cero or aehro in Spain.
Ah, the CZ sound again.
Yep. And cisash in quince. Getting these initial 15 down is really the key building block.
Absolutely. Mastering those first 15 is vital. What happens when we go beyond 15, the teens?
So from 16 to 19, instead of a separate teen ending like English, Spanish combines D with the unit number. It forms a single word.
The one word.
Yep. 16, 16, 17, 17, 18, 18, 19, 19, literally like 10 and 6, 10 and 7, etc., but squished together.
16, 17. Okay. And notice that 16 has an accent mark.
Good spot. Yes, that's to maintain the stress on the final syllable because of pronunciation rules.
Got it. And then we arrive at 20, which is 20.
Gente.
The numbers in the 20s follow a similar pattern to the teens, right? Like one word.
Yes, that's right. For 21 through 29, you start with 20, a shortened version of 20, and then add the unit number. Again, all one word.
Okay, so 21, 22.
Exactly. 22, 22, 23, 23, 26, 26, and so on. These also carry an accent on the last syllable if needed by the rules, like 22, 23, 26.
And you mentioned an older form.
Yeah, you might occasionally hear the older form like 22, 20 and 2, but honestly, modern Spanish overwhelmingly favors the single word 20 construction. It's much more common now.
Good to know. Stick with 20. Now, what about the round tens from 30 up to 90?
Those are 30, 30, 40, 40, 50, 50, 60, 60, 70, 70, 80, 80, and 90, 90.
Okay, 30, 40, 50.
And to form the numbers in between, like 31 or 47, it changes again. You say the 10, then E, which means and, followed by the one's digit.
Ah, so 31.
Exactly. 31, 47, 47, 82, 82.
And these are written separately, like 3 words.
Yes. Importantly, these are written as separate words. 31, unlike the teens and 20s.
Okay, that's a key difference. 1629 are 1 word, 3199, except the round tens are 3 words.
You got it. And a little tip, remember uno, 1. It stays uno when you're just counting or saying the number, like 31. It only changes to un before a masculine noun.
Right, like un libro, but 31. Okay. What about the number 100? That's 100, isn't it?
Exactly. 100 is used for 100 on its own. $100.
That's 100.
But when you're forming numbers from 101 upwards, 100 usually changes to ciento.
Ah, 100.
So 125 is 125.
Okay, so 100 alone, but ciento when adding more numbers after it.
Generally, yes. Though 100 is still used before mil, thousand, and millions, like 100 mil, 100,000, or 100 million.
100 million.
Okay, so 100 mil, not ciento mil.
Correct. Think of 100 as 100 flat and ciento as 100 in front.
That helps. So numbers like 101 to 199 all start with ciento.
Yes. 101, 120, 199 all start with ciento.
And you mentioned gender agreement earlier. Does ciento change?
It can, yeah, if it's functioning like an adjective modifying a feminine noun directly. So 101 people could be 101 personas, una muchas personas.
Ciento, yeah. Interesting. But just 100 people.
That would usually be 100 personas. A little nuance there. Okay, what about the other hundreds, 200, 300, and so on?
These have their own specific words, and some are a bit irregular.
Uh-oh. Irregulars.
Yeah, a few. So 200, 200, 300, 300, 400, 400, those are pretty regular. 2, 3, 4 plus cientos.
Okay, those make sense.
But then 500 is 500.
500, not 500.
Nope, 500, irregular. Then 600, 600 is regular, but 700 is 700.
700, not 700, okay.
Right. 800 is 800, regular, and 900 is 900.
900, not 900, got it.
Well,
500, 700, 900 are the weird ones.
Those are the main irregulars, and crucially, these hundreds words agree in gender with the noun they modify. They have feminine forms ending in S.
So 200 sillas for 200 chairs.
Exactly. 500 casas, 500 houses, 700 páginas, 700 pages. You need that S as ending for feminine nouns.
Okay, gender agreement for 200 through 900. Now let's jump up to 1,000. That's mil, right?
Mil, yes.
And I recall our guide mentioning something significant about using un with mil. Like, you don't...
Yes, that's a really important point. Mil 1000 generally does not take the article un before it.
So just mil euros, not un mil euros.
Exactly, just mil euros. Saying un mil is usually considered incorrect in standard Spanish. You might see it very occasionally on, like, bank checks for security, but in normal speech and writing, it's just mil.
Good to know. Avoid in mil and multiples, like 2,000.
Straightforward. Dos mil, 2,000, cinco mil, 5,000, 10 mil, 10,000. And mil itself doesn't change form, it's invariable. It doesn't become miles in this context.
Okay, mil stays mil. Moving into the millions.
Right. 1 million is un millón.
Ah, so here you do use un.
Yes. Unlike mil, you do use un with millón. Think of million as a noun, like a million.
Okay, un millón.
2 million is dos millones. The plural form is millones.
Makes sense.
And if you want to say a million of something, you need to use the preposition de.
De?
Yeah. Un millón de habitantes. 1 million inhabitants. Dos millones de dólares. $2 million. You need that de after millón or millones when followed by a noun.
Okay, 1 millón de habitantes. Got it. Now for the really big numbers. Billions and trillions. This is where English and Spanish systems really clash, isn't it?
Absolutely. This is probably one of the biggest pitfalls for English speakers dealing with large numbers in Spanish. It's crucial to grasp this.
Okay, lay it on us.
Spanish traditionally uses the long scale system for large numbers. So, un billón in Spanish is not an English billion.
It's not. What is it then?
Un billón in Spanish is a million millions. That's one followed by 12 zeros, 1 million.
A million millions. Wait, that's what we call a trillion in English.
Exactly. Spanish in billion is English US 1 trillion.
Wow. Okay. So what is an English billion? One followed by 9 zeros in Spanish.
An English billion, 1 million, is millones in Spanish, 1,000 millions.
Millions. Okay. So if I want to talk about, say, a company worth $5 billion.
You say 5 mil millones, the dollar is not 5 billones. That would be 5 trillion.
Holy cow. That's a huge potential error.
Massive. It's caused major problems in translation, finance, science, you name it. Always double check the context and be absolutely clear.
So English billion equal millions. Spanish billion, English trillion. Got it burned into my brain now.
Good. There is a word millardo in Spanish for 109, but it's not very common. Mil millones is standard. And a Spanish trillion is even bigger, a million billions.
Mind-boggling numbers. Okay, sticking with practicalities, what about how numbers were actually written down? The punctuation, commas, and periods.
Another area for potential confusion. In many Spanish-speaking countries, the roles of the comma and the period are often the reverse of what's common in the US or UK.
Reversed. How so?
Often the period is used to separate thousands, and the comma is used as the decimal separator.
Wait, really? So 3,500,000.50 in English might be?
It might be written as 3.500.0000050 in Spain or many parts of Latin America. The periods mark the thousands, the comma marks the decimal.
3,500,000, 50. Wow.
Yeah, so 3.537052 would be 3,537 euros and 52 cents.
Okay, need to mentally flip those symbols depending on the source. Are there exceptions?
Yes, definitely. Mexico and some other places in Latin America, like Guatemala, often follow the U.S. convention comma for thousands, period, for decimals. So you really have to pay attention to the context or know the regional standard.
Okay, context is key. How about saying decimals or prices out loud?
When speaking, you'll often hear comma used for the decimal point. 3,5 for 3.5.
Comma for the comma. Makes sense.
And for prices, it's very common to use con with. $4.50.
For $4.50.
4.50. Okay, practical. Any other number quirks, regional things?
Well, we mentioned the Sarah pronunciation difference,
Yes.
SVSA. Also, our guide notes that in Latin America, you might sometimes informally hear billion used to mean the English billion, 109, probably due to U.S. influence.
Oh, adding to the confusion. A little bit. But technically, and in formal context everywhere, mil millions is the correct term for the English billion. Best to stick with that for clarity.
Definitely stick with mil millions. Yeah, that's a lot on cardinal numbers. Feeling more confident, but also aware of the traps.
Good. Awareness is half the battle.
Now, let's move on to ordinal numbers, how we talk about order. First, second, third, and so on.
Right. Números ordinales. These indicate position in a sequence, like first place, second floor.
And they act like adjectives, right? Need to agree.
Exactly. They function as adjectives, so they need to agree in gender and number with the noun they describe.
Okay. So what are the first 10?
The first 10 are primero, primera, first, segundo, segunda, second, tercero, tercera, third, cuarto, cuarta, fourth, quinto, quinta, fifth, sexto, sexta, sixth, séptimo, séptima, seventh, octavo, octava, eighth, noveno, novena, ninth. Sometimes you might see nona too, but noveno is common, and décimo, décima, 10th.
Primero, segundo, tercero. Okay, notice the masculine O and feminine A forms. And I see something about primero and tercero shortening.
Yes, sharp eye. Primero becomes primer, and tercero becomes tercer when they come directly before a masculine singular noun.
Before a masculine singular noun. Okay, examples.
So you'd say el primer capítulo, the first chapter, not el primero capítulo, and el tercer piso, the third floor, not el tercero piso.
Primer and tercer, like how uno becomes un.
Exactly the same principle. The other ordinals, segundo, cuarto, etc., don't shorten, but they still need to agree in gender. La segunda vez, the second time feminine. El segundo día, the second day masculine.
Got it. Plurals just add ols or as.
Yep. Los primeros días, las segundas oportunidades.
Okay. Now, what happens after 10th? Our guide mentions they become less common in everyday conversation.
That's a really key point for practical usage. While ordinal numbers do exist beyond 10th, like undécimo or décimo primero, 11th, duodécimo or décimo segundo, 12th, up to vigésimo, 20th, and even higher.
These sound quite formal.
They do, and they are used much less frequently in daily speech. You're far more likely to encounter them in formal writing, maybe talking about kings or centuries in a historical text, or very specific official contexts.
So 21st, 30th, 100th?
They exist 21º, 21st, 30th, 30th, 40th, 100th, but again, mainly for formal stuff.
So in typical everyday situations, what do Spanish speakers usually do after the 10th, if they don't use undécimo often?
In most everyday contexts, after 10th, it's much, much more common to simply use the cardinal number after the noun.
Cardinal number after the noun. Like,
So instead of saying the formal ordinal for 21st birthday, you typically hear el cumpleaños 21, the birthday 21, or even just talk about the age, cumplir 21 años, to turn 21 years old.
oh, okay, el cumpleaños 21. Much simpler.
Way simpler. Same for centuries. The 20th century is most often el siglo XX, the century 20, not el siglo XX.
Even though you see it written as siglo XX.
Right. You see siglo XX, but you read it aloud as siglo XX. Using cardinals after the noun for position beyond 10th is very standard in spoken Spanish.
That definitely simplifies things, makes it less intimidating.
Yeah.
What about when talking about dates? Do they use ordinals for the day?
Only for the first day of the month.
Just the first.
Yep. For dates, Spanish uses cardinal numbers for the day except for the first. So you would say el 5th de mayo, May 5th, el 15th de septiembre, September 15th.
The 5 de mayo a 15 de septiembre. Okay.
But for May 1st, you say el primero de mayo.
El primero. Got it. Only the first uses an ordinal.
Exactly. You might sometimes hear el uno de mayo in Spain, but primero is standard pretty much everywhere for the first. You'd never say el quinto de mayo using an ordinal. Always cardinal after the first.
Okay. Crystal clear. And how are these ordinals abbreviated in writing? Like first, second, third?
Similar idea. Spanish uses a superscript letter, one willet for primero, masculine, and one way for primera, feminine. That little circle or A indicates gender.
Ah, a little floating O or A. Seen those.
Exactly. You might also see one or ear for the shortened primer, 2-point ear, or 2-point to say for segundo, segunda, 3-point ear for the shortened tercer. They agree in gender with the noun.
Makes sense. And Roman numerals.
Ah, yes. Roman numerals are often used for names of royalty, popes, centuries, sometimes chapters or congresses. And when you read them aloud as part of a name, you usually use the ordinal number.
So Charles III.
Is read as Carlos III, not Carlos Tres. Pope John Paul II is Juan Pablo II.
Carlos III, Juan Pablo II. Good to know. Okay, we've built a really strong base now with the alphabet, cardinals, and ordinals.
Yeah, that covers the core systems.
But now let's talk about how we can actually use this knowledge.
Yeah.
Practical applications in everyday situations.
Absolutely. This is where it gets really useful. Being able to handle letters and numbers is key for so many real-world scenarios. Let's start with telling time. Super practical.
Okay, telling time. What's the question?
The essential question is, ¿qué hora es? What time is it?
¿Qué hora es?
Now, for 1 o'clock, it's a bit special. You say, es la una.
Es la una. Singular es and la.
Exactly. Singular form of the verb ser, es, and the feminine singular article la, because una refers implicitly to la hora, the hour, which is feminine.
Ah, because order is feminine. Okay.
For all other hours, you use the plural form son and the plural article las. Son las dos, it's 2 bottom zeros. Son las tres, it's 3 0 0 0. Son las ones, it's 11 bottom zeros.
So unless 4 through 12. Got it. How about minutes past the hour? Like 2.10.
Simple. You just add y and follow by the number of minutes. Son las dos y diez, it's 2.90. Son las nueve y cinco, it's 9.05.
Okay, hour minutes. What about quarter past and half past?
Common shortcuts there. Quarter past 0.15 is often expressed as y cuarto. Half past 0.30 is y media.
Y cuarto y media.
So 7.15 would be son las siete y cuarto, and 11.30 is son las once y media.
Nice. What about when you want to say minutes before the next hour, like 10 to 6, 5.50?
Yeah, yes. For times after the half hour, Spanish often uses menos, minus or less. You think of it as the next hour minus the minutes remaining.
Okay, so 5.50 would be...
Son las 6 menos 10. 6 minus 10.
Menos 10.
Got it.
And 7.45.
Frequently, las 8 menos cuarto. 8 minus a quarter. Quarter to 8.
8 menos cuarto. Okay, that's a different way of thinking, but logical. Is that the only way?
It's very common, especially in Spain. In many parts of Latin America, you might also hear the more direct form, like 7:45 for 7.45. Both work.
Good to know there are options. And AM PM.
You specify using de la mañana in the morning, roughly until noon, de la tarde in the afternoon, early evening until dark, or de la noche at night.
So son las 2 de la tarde for 2 p.m.
Exactly. And remember, the 24-hour clock is also very common, especially in schedules and formal contexts. 14 bello is las 14.
Right, the 24-hour clock. Dates are another really fundamental practical application. How do you say those in Spanish?
Dates in Spanish usually follow the order: day, month, year.
Day, month, year, opposite of the U.S. month, day, year.
Correct. And the structure is el plus number de plus month.
El nombre de month.
So March 1st is el primero de marzo, using the ordinal primero for the first.
Only for the first, like we discussed.
Yep. But June 7th is el 7 de junio, using the cardinal number state. October 3rd is el 3 de octubre.
El 7 de junio, el 3 de octubre. Use cardinals for day 2 onwards.
Correct. If you add the day of the week, it goes first. El lunes 3 de octubre.
And days of the week and months, capitalized.
No, that's a key difference from English. Days of the week and months of the year are generally not capitalized in Spanish unless they start a sentence.
Lowercase lunes, lowercase octubre. Got it. How about reading years, like 1999 or 2023?
You read the full number, don't split it.
So not 1999.
No, 1999 is 1999.
Wow, mouthful.
It can be. And 2023 is 2023.
1999, 2023. Okay, read the whole number. Talking about money is definitely crucial too. How do you handle prices?
Usually state the number first, then the currency. $2, $5, 20 pesos.
Straightforward. What about cents? Like 4.850.
You often use 4.50
4.50 at the time thing.
Exactly. In some regions, you might just hear €4.50, omitting the con. Both are common.
Okay. And remember the comma period swap for decimals when writing.
Yes. Crucial when reading prices. Currency symbols, etc. can go before or after, depending on convention.
And what about giving addresses and phone numbers? How do numbers work there?
For addresses, the street name typically comes before the number in Spanish. Calle Mayor, 15.
Street first, then number. Okay. How do you say the number?
Just the regular cardinal number, Calle Mayor, quince. If there's an apartment or floor, you might use ordinals or letters like tercero B, third floor, apt B, or quinta planta, fifth floor. Often abbreviated like 3 to go B or 5 for planta.
Got it. Phone numbers.
It varies a bit. In Spain, digits are often grouped and read in 2s or 3s like 91, 234, 56, 78, or sometimes digit by digit.
Okay. And Latin America.
Often more common to say each digit individually. 91234. Or maybe in pairs. There isn't one single universal way, really. Listen to locals. But know the names for digits I09 cold.
0 through 9 are essential. Finally, what about talking about age and birthdays?
Big difference here. In Spanish, you have years, you don't are years. You use the verb tener, to have.
Tenor. So not soy 20 años.
No, definitely not. It's tengo 20 años. I am 20 years old.
Tengo 20 años.
Okay.
And the question,
¿Cuántos años tienes? How many years do you have? How old are you?
¿Cuántos años tienes? Makes sense. And birthdays.
You typically just give the date using the structure we learned. Mi cumpleaños es el 14 de febrero. My birthday is February 14th.
Okay. And how do you say, it's my 25th birthday, or I'm turning 25?
You'd say cumplo 25 años. The verb cumplir means to complete or fulfill, so you're completing 25 years.
Cumplo 25 años. Nice. And happy birthday.
The standard is feliz cumpleaños.
Feliz cumpleaños. All right. That covers a ton of really practical situations, makes the numbers and letters feel much more real.
Yeah, seeing how they're used day to day is key.
Now, let's flip it slightly. What are some of the common challenges or pitfalls that English speakers tend to hit when learning the Spanish alphabet and numbers?
Oh, there are definitely a few common hurdles. Pronunciation is usually the first one.
Like what specifically?
Well, numbers like quince, quince, or 22, 20, DHS, have vowel sounds and stress patterns that can feel unnatural at first.
Yeah, getting the stress right.
Exactly. And the different sounds of C and Z, depending on the region, the S versus SIG thing we talked about, that can trip people up.
And the rolled R.
The infamous rolled R. Yes, in words like cuatro or pero. That takes dedicated practice for many English speakers. It's a physical skill.
Definitely. What else on pronunciation?
Distinguishing B and uve, B and V, by name, since they sound the same in speech. Remembering the H is silent, getting the guttural J sound, Yamon. Pronouncing loan words like whiskey with Spanish phonetics. Lots of little things.
Okay, pronunciation's a big one. What about false friends? Words that look similar but aren't.
Yes. Those are sneaky. We mentioned once, 11, not one time.
Right, and billion.
The big one. Billion. Trillion, not billion. Also, docena means a group of 10, not a dozen, which is docena. Small differences that matter.
And just generally being mindful of the number formatting differences, commas and periods.
Absolutely critical. Seeing $5,000 and knowing it likely means 5,000, not 5, is vital, especially when dealing with money or data from certain regions.
And let's just hammer it home one more time. English billion versus Spanish billion.
Yes. Can't stress it enough. English billion, 109. Spanish millones. Spanish billion. English trillion. Burn it in. Misunderstanding this has huge consequences.
Okay. Message received. We also touched on numbers changing form, like uno becoming un.
Right. Grammatical changes. Uno becomes un before masculine nouns, un chico, and una before feminine nouns, una chica.
And that applies to numbers ending in one.
Yes. 21 becomes 21.
Esca.
Or 21 fem. 31 becomes 31, so 31 fem when modifying a noun directly.
Okay, the uno ending adapts. And the ordinals.
Remember, primero shortens to primer and tercero to tercer before masculine singular nouns.
Primer dia tercer mes.
Exactly. And ciento becomes cien when it stands alone or before mil or mirons.
Right, cien, but ciento uno.
And don't forget, no un before mil, just mil.
Got it. Lots of little rules to internalize there. Finally, I know from experience, just listening to big numbers spoken fast can be really hard.
Oh yeah, that's a very common challenge. Completely understandable. Hearing 1985 when you're expecting 1985 can just sound like a blur at first. The key is just tons of listening practice. Train your ear. Listen to weather reports, news headlines about finances, automated phone menus, anywhere numbers are spoken.
And ask people to repeat.
Absolutely. Don't be shy. Puede repetirlo, por favor. It takes time and exposure to get used to parsing those long number strings. Practice helps you anticipate the patterns.
Okay, so we've identified the challenges. Now, the constructive part. What are some really effective techniques or tricks that can help us truly master the Spanish alphabet and numbers? Make it stick.
Great question. There are lots of effective strategies. One fun way to start with the alphabet is literally singing the Spanish alphabet song.
Like for kids. Did that work?
Hey, don't knock it. It works. It helps get the sequence and the letter names, A, B, say, day, into your head through rhythm and repetition. Same for counting songs on those Tres Amigos. They really help lock in those basic sequences.
Okay, I'm willing to try the alphabet song. What else?
Mnemonics.
Definitely. Create your own little memory hooks for tricky numbers or letter sounds, whatever works for your brain. Maybe quince sounds like keen rays of sun at age 15. Weird is memorable.
Huh. I like that. And you mentioned spelling earlier.
Yes. Actively spelling words out loud is huge. Do it regularly. Spell your name, your street name, new vocabulary words, say the Spanish letter names. Efe, elo, erer.
Practice actually saying eme, Exactly. Pretend you're giving your email address over the phone. It makes you retrieve those letter names actively. For an extra challenge, learn the Spanish phonetic alphabet, Alpha, Bravo, Charlie, but the Spanish versions. Though just associating letters with common words, idea avion, helps too.
Good tip. And for numbers, you stress using them in context, not just counting.
Massively important. Don't just count 1 to 100. Actively use numbers all day. See the time. Say it in Spanish, even if just in your head. See a price. Say it. Need 3 apples. Think tres manzanas. Read license plates. Try saying the numbers.
Integrated into daily life.
Exactly. Make it active. Tell yourself the date in Spanish each morning. Count your steps. Measure ingredients for cooking in Spanish. Turn everyday numbers into mini lessons.
That makes sense. And making it fun. Games.
Always helps. Spanish bingo is fantastic for number listening comprehension.
Yeah.
You hear the number, you find it. Simple but effective.
Bingo. Love it.
Or play Find Someone Who using ages or birth months. Do mock phone conversations exchanging fake numbers. Play spelling bees with Spanish words. Even simple things like hangman, ahorcado, or word searches reinforce letters. Mental math in Spanish. Dos más dos son.
Cuatro. Yeah, games definitely make practice less of a chore. What about digital tools, apps and stuff?
Oh, absolutely leverage those. Duolingo, Quizlet, Memrise, Babbel. Many have specific modules for alphabet and numbers, often with audio. YouTube is packed with tutorials, Spanish Pod 101, Butterfly Spanish. Tons of others have great pronunciation guides.
So lots of resources online.
Loads. And try changing your phone or computer interface language to Spanish. You'll see numbers and letters used constantly in context. Use Siri or Google Assistant in Spanish. Ask at the time or simple math questions.
Immersive tech.
Nice.
Any final tips on memory aids or really maximizing immersion?
Well, for memory, look for patterns in the numbers. Notice how the tens often relate to the base unit, 440, 880.
Hmm.
Learn in chunks, master 0, 10, then 11, 19, then the 20s, then the 10s, etc. Don't try to swallow it all at once.
Break it down, manageable chunks.
Yes, and for immersion, just expose yourself. Listen to Spanish radio, even if you don't understand everything. Catch the numbers in news reports or sports scores. Pay attention to automated announcements in airports or train stations if you travel. Read signs. Look at prices in ethnic grocery stores. Every little bit helps tune your ear.
So it really boils down to consistent practice, using different methods, and just sticking with it.
Exactly. Patience and persistence. Mastering the Spanish alphabet and numbers isn't magic. It's just a fundamental step, but it's totally achievable.
Yeah.
By putting these techniques into practice, being patient with yourself and, celebrating the small wins, you build that solid foundation. And that base unlocks so much more communication and understanding down the road.
It really feels like getting these basics right is the key to opening the door to the rest of the language.
Couldn't agree more. It
Yeah.
builds confidence right from the start.
So, on that encouraging note, here's something to think about. Consider just how many times you encounter letters and numbers each and every single day. Reading emails, checking the time, seeing prices, hearing addresses.
Constant, isn't it?
It really is. And now you have the essential tools to transform each of those countless moments into a mini Spanish lesson. So the question is, what new doors, what new opportunities will mastering this foundational knowledge open up for you in your ongoing Spanish learning adventure?